Hey, what's up? Hello, everyone. Welcome into Fantasy Filmball, the show where we turn movies into sports and sports into something we don't talk about here. My name is Matt.
And my name is Dylan. Today we are talking about one of, the bigger blockbusters of this summer, and that is Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny. Before we dive into this episode, something very fun is coming up on the channel here shortly. So Matt, why don't you tell everyone out there what we have in store?
The name of our channel is Fantasy Filmball, and that's not just because we're here talking about films. It is because we run a game called Fantasy Filmball that all of you can participate in. Through this game, you draft a team of 10 films and you watch those films accumulate points through the award season. And whoever gets the most award success through Oscar season wins the game. It's very fun. If you want to play, join our Discord down in the description. The registration is open until August 15th this year, so join. And with that being said, let's talk Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny. We are a little bit late getting to this movie. That means we can talk spoilers, because y'all out there have seen the film at this point, so we can talk all the dirty details about Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny. But before we get into the fifth movie in the Indiana Jones franchise, I want to know, Dylan, what do you think about the Indiana Jones series as a whole?
I love Indiana Jones growing up as a kid. We've talked about on the show before. Temple of Doom was one of my favorites as a child, but I also loved Raiders of the Lost Ark, Last Crusade. I think they're three pretty great movies, but to be completely honest, I have not watched any of these movies in probably about 10 years. So,
oh my God.
It's one of those where, I remember adoring them. I just haven't gone and seeked them out. And Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, I don't remember really liking as much when it came out. I still remember going to the theater and seeing it because I remember I had a Burger King toy of Shia LaBeouf on his motorcycle. But overall, thought the movie was just okay. And going into this one, I was super excited. I was really hoping to see a new fun indie adventure. And then those canned reactions came out and I was like, oh, okay, but I'm still gonna go see it.
I love some Indiana Jones. I am very mixed on other Indiana Jones. I think Raiders of the Lost Ark might be the finest adventure movie of all time. The series after that has had ups and downs. Temple of Doom, I do not like. It's got great action in it. I just think it's kind of a hateful movie. Then Last Crusade, great film. It is just a joy to watch, one of the greatest adventure movies out there. And then Kingdom of the Crystal Skull is mid. So I'm up and down. I don't know. I never had a huge tie to Indiana Jones. I didn't watch the movies as a kid, so I discovered them a little bit later on. I was excited to see this one because James Mangold has done some great work recently with Ford v Ferrari, with Logan, and I was really excited to see what he would do with his Indiana Jones movie. Generally, it seems like people are very mixed on this movie. It's getting very mediocre reactions. The reactions have improved quite a lot since Cannes, the way that they did with Elemental as well, but it's still not a very well-liked take on Indiana Jones. What are your general thoughts on this movie? Are you coming out more like the audience on this, or are you a little bit higher up?
That opening scene with Indy versus the Nazis, I guess you could call it younger Indy, was really cool at first, and then it just kept going and going and going. It felt like it was 30-40 minutes, and it was okay, we could have done this in 10. It was just very overlonged, and then we get that opening sequence of Indy. He's old and he's teaching, but he's about to retire. I think I fell asleep for a little bit during that. I was already a little tired, and that scene didn't help me. However, once they start their journey and they go globe-trotting with some big set pieces, I was into the movie from that point until we got to our final act, which I still don't really know how I feel about it, but I very much appreciate the bold swings. There's some stuff I really like, some stuff I really don't like, but overall, I had fun in the moment, but I probably won't think about this movie much more going forward.
I had fun with the movie. I thought that Mangold did a solid job. He's no Steven Spielberg, but no one is. I still thought that he staged the action scenes in a pretty solid way. They were very fun to watch. I didn't feel the way that you did with scenes dragging on. I did have some issues with the plot in this one. I found that it was so based on repetition. It was just a constant, Indiana Jones gets a clue. They go to the clue. They're followed to the clue. Then the Nazis take the clue away and they go and repeat the process over and over and over. It just kept happening constantly. I don't know. I think that was a bit boring to me. At a certain point, you'd think that they would start to cover up their tracks so that they stopped being followed. But outside of that, I really enjoyed the movie. Now, I don't feel the need to see an old Indiana Jones story. I think that this character has so much more to do as a young person. I wish that they had taken cues from James Bond and just replaced Indiana Jones with a younger actor so that we could continue seeing Indiana Jones stories without it being about a geriatric old man doing things that an 80-year-old man should not be doing. That's just boring. So I'm mixed as well, but I liked it overall. I thought there were some great ideas. Like you mentioned, some of the stuff near the end was so wild and such a big swing that I kind of had a blast with it. Now, we've already talked a little bit about our mixed reactions. I kind of liked it, but it's clear that audiences are not really liking this movie because the box office here has not been hitting. It's been a very disappointing box office performance. And Dylan, why do you think that it's underperforming the way it has been?
It's massive budget definitely doesn't help, because regardless, even if this movie made like $50 more million, it still would be in the red just because of various reshoots. I know they started shooting this movie and then Harrison Ford got hurt, so they had to stop production and come back a few months later, and that had lots of cost as well as COVID and everything like that. So I feel like this movie was destined to fail financially from the start. On top of those aforementioned can reactions, I mean, when your movies hit with stuff that negative, it's very hard to overcome that. In the short term, maybe long term, it could overcome that once it hits home video. But overall, I think it was just a mix of both of those. I know that you said you don't really want to see old Indy, but I think Harrison Ford's the best part of this movie. You can tell he's still fully into this character, unlike the Star Wars movies with Han Solo or even Blade Runner. I feel like this is the most into a character Harrison Ford has been in a long time. Even if he does look a little old and a little awkward, he still just embodies who Indiana Jones is as a person, as a character, and you can feel that oozing through the screen.
I'm not saying that Harrison Ford is bad. I'm just saying that there's a systemic problem when the only franchises that the studios see are bankable are ones where the actors have aged so far out of being action heroes. This is a huge issue right now. Hollywood has not put any stock into building new stars, and so they've just been recycling the old stars. You guys liked Arnold, here's another Arnold movie. You guys liked Sylvester Stallone, here's another Sylvester Stallone movie. Harrison Ford was Indiana Jones, Harrison Ford was Blade Runner, Harrison Ford was Han Solo. He's back as all of those roles. There's been so little consideration to building new stars that people want to go to the theaters to see that soon all of these big action heroes will be gone. I think that's a huge point of why so many films are underperforming in the box office right now. People are getting tired of seeing old men in their action movies.
I think it's time to dive into how this Dial of Destiny actually works and everything that went down in that third act, because at first I really was like, what am I watching? Is this for real? Did we actually just do this?
I loved this final act. This is the highlight of the movie for me. This was the promise of the movie. So for anyone out there who needs a recap, here you go. So at the end of the movie, they take the Dial of Destiny, the thing that they've been searching for. Now, the Dial of Destiny is an old clock made by Archimedes, and this clock reportedly has the power to turn back time. The Nazis have been after this because they want to go back and ensure that Germany wins the Second World War. Because of continental drift, they end up setting the time to the wrong time, and they go back to ancient Greece as the Romans are attacking where Archimedes lives. And so, yeah, it's like a kind of crazy moment where suddenly we've got these old Roman warships, and these Romans are sacking this town, and there's planes flying through the skies, and you've got people in Nazi uniforms hanging out the side of jets, shooting at these Roman warships as the Romans send harpoons and spears at the planes, and they're yelling that they're dragons. Insane. And that's kind of why I fucking loved it. It felt like old Indy to me. Every Indiana Jones movie has that moment in the third act where no longer are they just chasing after the relic that they've been talking about the whole time. The relic's power is demonstrated. Raiders of the Lost Ark. They open up the Lost Ark, everyone's face melts off. Turns out all the myths about it were true. This felt like that. If anything, I would have liked a little bit more time travel exploring. I would love to see Indiana Jones going through time, exploring these different periods. I would have loved more of that, but what we got I thought was a lot of fun.
I eventually came around to it because I really liked what they were attempting to go for. I don't really know if it came through across the screen, but of how Indy has been someone who spent his whole life searching for history and researching it and discovering it. But now he is a part of history and he wants to stay there. But because of life, I guess, he's not allowed to stay there.
I also want to talk about some elements that really stood out to me in a positive way. I think that John Williams' score is absolutely incredible in this movie. I spent most of the film not even paying attention to what was on screen, but thinking about how John Williams was elevating things on screen. He made it feel like an Indiana Jones movie, because a lot of the time, James Mangold was trying to copy Spielberg, but it wasn't fully coming across all the time. It always felt like classic Indiana Jones whenever you heard what John Williams was doing. He is in another level. He had some really interesting motifs and themes throughout this movie. It wasn't just the classic score that we know.
Yeah, I mean, I've said it before. I really liked Harrison Ford in this movie. He's definitely the highlight for me. And I guess some more mixed thoughts about this movie comes from essentially the rest of the cast, because Mads Mikkelsen, great actor. He wasn't really given much to do here. He's just bad Nazi doctor guy, and he doesn't really get much nuance to his character. Phoebe Waller-Bridge has moments, but also has some really bad moments too, but I don't think that's due to her as an actress, just due to what she's given to say. That's kind of how I felt with a lot of this, because there's a lot of characters introduced. It's this person wasn't here in the past, but Indy knows him, so they must be cool. And then they immediately just kill them off, or just say, go away real quick, we'll come back to you later. And I get, we always talk about in Marvel movies, oh, there needs to be some sort of stakes, characters we know and love are supposed to die. But in this movie, it just felt here's characters, we need to kill them because we can't kill Indy and we can't kill the two people closest to Indy, so let's just kill off these side characters, so you feel there's some sort of stakes going on even though there's no stakes at all.
I'll also say the production design was a bit of a letdown for me. There are so many movies that kind of have copied what Indiana Jones has done, and this felt like a knockoff of itself in the way that the production design was done. I didn't feel really inspired by the relics or the places that the set pieces were happening in. Temple of Doom, every set feels like a playground. Every set is so exciting and has so many hidden things. It feels like anything could be a trap or a hidden passageway. I didn't get that here. It felt very plain in the production design elements of it all. But I will say the visual effects were really strong in this movie. I think this might be the best de-aging I've ever seen in a film. It was so much stronger than The Irishman, for example, because in The Irishman, you still had De Niro walking around like an old man, and it doesn't sell it when he's supposed to look young. In that first act here, they used stunt doubles so effectively mixed in with Harrison Ford that you never for a second, outside of his voice, you never for a second would have thought that this is an 85-year-old man.
Yeah, for the production design, another element I would say is just a little letdown is especially that cave there at the end. We don't really get a sense of what the whole place really looks like. Every city they went to in their globetrotting and whatever, you never really got a swooping introduction or a good gauge of what the city looks like, how big it actually is, or anything along those lines. You just see what's physically in front of you at the moment. And I think that also carries over into our Oscar chances, because I feel Indiana Jones movies, as you were talking about, are supposed to be these big production design spectacles, which this one isn't at all. And I mean, I don't really see an avenue for this to get any nominations, but I guess if I had to say possibly one, John Williams could sneak his way in there for score, especially if this ends up being his final work.
I don't think it's a sneak in for score, because it's John Williams. He is such a legend, and it's a really, really good score. Yeah, the movie might not be lighting everyone on fire the way that it should be to get an Oscar nomination, but hey, it's John Williams. He made a nomination for The Rise of Skywalker happen. I don't see why he couldn't for this movie, when I think the score here is much stronger. I'd also say visual effects are a very strong nomination for this film. So yeah, I'm going to predict 2 nominations here, visual effects and original score.
Since we are quickly approaching our draft season here at Fantasy Filmball, I feel we should add a new segment here into these reviews. And it's, should you draft this movie? And if so, which round would you feel is a good, little estimate for this? And we both just said Oscar chances 2-0 category. So to me, this is your 10th round pick, your 9th round pick. You're taking a big swing at the end just to be I want this on my roster, but when the waivers come around, I can easily get rid of this if I lose faith in it.
Yeah, I wouldn't say 10th round necessarily, but it's 8th to 10th round. You are not going to want to take this as a high priority pick. This is one in the pile of shit at the end when you're what remaining has a chance of getting one Oscar nomination. That's the type of film that this is. So this is a very low tier movie when we're talking about the Fantasy Filmball game. If you pick this up, It's probably not going to cross 200 points, but it's definitely not going to be below 100. So it's still a reliable pick. It's just not one of the strongest picks you could go with.
Well, with all that being said, we would love to hear your thoughts on Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny down below. Were you more of a fan of this movie than both of us were, or did you think that it's a lot worse? If you made it this far, though, consider dropping a like, a dislike, a subscription, because we have new movie news almost daily here on the channel. But until next time, my name is Dyl.
And my name is Matt, and this is Fantasy Filmball.